everyone, Dan Goodstein here with IRPA AI. I'm joined today by Dr. Axel Nitschke. He's the partner of IBM Enterprise Strategy and head of retail and consumer goods for the DACH region. Axel, good to be with you.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Dan. Really looking forward to our conversation and going a bit deeper into some of the exciting things we see out there in the retail market in these days.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a turbulent space right now. So I'm really interested in your thoughts, and I know you're working with a bunch of clients right now to help them kind of navigate this. Before we jump in, maybe give everybody a little bit of your background.
Yeah, super. More than happy to. So look, I have to admit, I'm passionate about retail brands who do retail since more than 20 years. I think it's in my DNA since my university days. I did my PhD in brand management. And then throughout the upcoming years during my career, I was very fortunate to work on this topic many years as consultant, advising global clients, but also looking at the things from the other side, having worked in executive positions for global retailers by myself. In particular in the fashion and apparel industry, be it for brands, be it for multi-label department stores, and that's very much what I'm doing in these days. Also, working together with my clients, with our clients, on those challenges out there. And actually, I think what is driving us and driving me is being part of building better companies, building better consumer offerings. I'm doing this out of Germany. My IBM office is a town called Düsseldorf. Some of you who are very savvy in Europe or even Germany might know it. Mainly taking care of clients in the DACH region and supporting them on their digital journey, on their tech journey. And what we are seeing in these days, and that's why I'm so excited about it, in the past, it was very much separated discussions, right? You could have the business talk, talking with the CEO, the COO, the chief marketing or sales officer. And then at some point of time, it was handed over to tech or IT, and they had to build it. I think throughout the last years, I've really seen that things got fully interconnected. You cannot separate the business from the technology, from the data agenda anymore. At the same time, the CIO wants to really understand the business agenda, and the CEO also wants to go deep into tech and data topics. So I think this has become a unique situation, a different situation, and certainly with a lot of things to do, things to work on together. And that's sort of how I'm spending my week and days. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, listen, so it's, from an outsider perspective, it seems to me like sometimes that retail is kind of imploding. I mean, certainly, our network is global, but I'm in the US, and, News and Bed Bath and Beyond, and, other stores like those, really struggling to evolve, seemingly. I'm curious. I'm an outsider. You're an insider. What's happening in these organizations, and why are we seeing this? Are they really kind of struggling to adapt, or is there kind of light at the end of the tunnel here?
Well, I think certainly there's a full set of challenges and very specific situations with every client and every company out there in the marketplace. But I think there are some common traits or common themes we see, which make it really hard for a lot of companies, and often in particular for those ones which have a significant brick and mortar stationary retail footprint and used to be very successful. And one of the themes is, I think it became pretty obvious at an early stage for a lot of those companies to say, we need to do also something with digital or build our own online shop or those kind of things. Now, I think where some of them are, still struggling is building really one integrated offering across those channels and really accept that the consumer journeys go all the way. What certainly also means that you, to some extent, need to sacrifice your retail footprint, because at the end of the day, me, from a consumer perspective, we do not really care at the end of the day if I click it via my cell phone or if I enjoy a nice day in the store.
Sure.
And the dynamics of this are really amazing. I think there was quite a long time where this exponential growth coming from pure players building platforms with more articles, more brands, was to a good extent underestimated, right? And now catching up for these concepts is tough because while digital grew, the consumer expectations, the consumer requirements have been increasing so much regarding convenience, regarding speed of delivery, regarding attractive pricing, and so on and so forth. So if you're sort of behind the pack now, it's really tough to keep up across many, many dimensions. And to keep up, it's not only, let's say, the digital piece a lot of us experience being a customer. Certainly, there's a whole backbone, the way the organization is set up, meaning what's actually the link between the sales side, the stores, the digital front ends, the merchandising, the buying, and then all the way through logistics and so on and so forth to make these new business models happen and make them happen in a profitable way.
So, one question that comes up a lot, or maybe an excuse that comes up is the pandemic and other major disruptions. Suez Canal blockage a while back. War in Ukraine now. Are these things really in their own right kind of creating challenges, or are these just kind of excuses for what's always been a problem, maybe just magnified now?
Well, I would say a bit of both, but it could be that the magnification of existing problems even is the bigger impact. Certainly, it was a severe challenge for retailers with a footprint if you cannot open your stores anymore, right? Your whole cost structure is still there. No more revenues. A lot of quick fixes were done short notice to use the merchandise to get it online. And at the same time, those companies, in particular, the digital pure players, already online used the situation, to accelerate their growth with 20, 30, 40, 50% growth versus March of previous year and those kind of things. So it was crazy. We saw categories like grocery who could simply not keep up with supplying consumers online. Now, to your point on magnifying an existing problem, I think it's fair to sort of leave the element of not being able to open up stores a bit beside, because this was indeed an exceptional challenge. But one of the existing problems we are seeing is the whole flexibility, the agility of the retail model to adapt was a lot of sub-segments and with a lot of retailers relatively low. So they felt the full exposure of not being able to reallocate merchandise across channels, not being able to scale up e-com operations quickly, not being able to respond to supply challenges upstream, being, a ship is getting blocked, being factories shut down. And we could see this, literally all the way, large scale merchandise not arriving, but also, on the long tail, I've been talking to, a small retailer, expert shop for sports equipment. And they said, Axel, I was there sort of buying private stuff, and I was a bit shocked that the shelves were quite empty. And said, look, we were supposed to get 600 shoes from that brand, and they didn't deliver a single one. So, it has been significant. And one of the challenges, why is this so radical, a bit of a black and white picture, that in segments like fashion or sports, whilst leading players are trying to smoothen the seasonality and pushing a continuous flow of new merchandise into the market, a large proportion of the market is still working at relatively large waves with long lead times. And, if there's a block in this system, everything becomes very complicated.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the answer, Axel? It seems like amongst that doom and gloom, there's a handful of brands out there that seem like they've really embarked on the digital journey,
Yeah,
and I think they're sustaining and maybe even in some cases really accelerating their position in the marketplace. What are they doing that's working?
yeah. So I would say a couple of things. When we say leading retailers, there is those in the market who have really evolved with their business model, understanding the economics of digital commerce, integrating more brands into their offers, trading on marketplaces. So really, building something which is competitive to digital pure plays like Amazon, Zara, Zalando's, and so on and so forth, right? So this is, I think, important to understand that the consumer journeys have changed. Then on the how, it's actually one thing where we really see companies who are able to do both a good front end customer facing experience across the channels and link this via data to the operations, to the back end, the merchandising, the buying, the supply chain. So working on both and keeping it quite nicely in sync, that seems to be really one of the recipes for success. And on the how do we get there? I would say it's a good balance of certainly having this mid to long term tech roadmap division in sight and allocating a fair share of funds, some 20 to 30% more on this mid to long term things. In these days, for example, the metaverse is one of the hot things to talk about and to work on and invest. But certainly at the same time, you need to focus on the incremental improvements, agile developments, so more or less on the now, which typically would get 60 to 70% of the funding. So working across, those two things, the front end in sync with the back end, in sync with the operations, and on the long term in sync with the short term investments, that's really what helps retailers to go on a sustainable transformation journey.
So, I think, at least many of the retailers I speak to on our member network, they seem to be kind of stuck in an old world of doing things very manually, right? Organizations that, have really no inventory visibility, large car manufacturer who couldn't even tell you if a part had been manufactured, never mind where it was. From a customer standpoint, another example of a large accessories company that was managing their entire supply chain globally in Excel. Right? And I know you talk a lot about kind of this idea of an intelligent supply chain. So what is that, and how does it help? How do we get people from this manual process to something more intelligent?
Yeah. No, indeed, it's something I'm passionate about. So the way I would approach is first, why do we actually want to build something like an intelligent supply chain? And we've talked about all the challenges, but then the key point is, I think in the past it was a bit of a triangle where you could choose your position. Do you go for the cost, for the speed, for the quality? And having trade-offs was quite acceptable, right? It was okay, and you could win in the market with one or the other position. Now, in these days, it's not three dimensions anymore. It's many, many more things you have to keep in mind. You have to add sustainability without compromising. You have to add agility and resilience. And at the same time, this I do one thing but not the other does not work anymore, right? So from a consumer perspective, there should be a very cost efficient, high service level supply chain, which is also very reliable and provides me good quality services. And by the way, I want this is sustainable. Now, to overcome this traditional trade-offs, this is where I think the intelligence kicks in. And intelligence actually means that I use the benefit of connecting the different silos, so to say, the different the different steps, how the merchandise flows through the supply chain. I connect them instead of optimizing the individual decisions. I'm able to optimize the overall piece. So optimizing the buy with what the consumer is asking for. And the way I would envision it, if I would draw it on a piece of paper, is actually the word supply chain doesn't really sound right to me anymore. It's more a supply circle, which starts with the creation and then goes all the way through the production into the sales channel. And the key one is that those individual steps are interconnected and the data flows. So in these days, intelligent supply chain means for me, I'm not doing anything based on last year's and last year's data only. It's a continuous flow of optimization, and I adjust the different kind of things. And then you might want to ask, well, understood, sounds quite interesting, but what does it really mean? And for me, it's a bit like a model with different layers. There's really a foundation. It's hard to argue that you can do it without it. So you need to be on the back of things regarding your data quality, the way the organization is set up to make this happen. And then typically you increase it step by step. First, getting transparency in there. So example on the inventory, I have to admit, yes, it's one of the key challenges. So transparency, end-to-end visibility on the flow of goods is actually the first level. And then you can sort of work yourself up one floor by the other, and you start addressing more sophisticated things. Doing optimization across different segments. So optimizing the transport with the warehousing, optimizing the store availability with your deployment in the DC network. Up to the highest level where you would say your supply chain is, so to say, self-learning, which basically means you continuously monitor the operations and the system identifies patterns where it proposes optimization parameters. So that's what I would call intelligence. And there's a last element on it. You know, when you mentioned your example of the Excel sheet, a lot of time still goes for many, many people into relatively repetitive tasks, extracting data, doing the Excel sheets, best case, even translating the Excel into a PowerPoint. Now, intelligent for me also means let's ensure that the professionals who work in the supply chain, who work in adjacent functions like the retail or the sourcing, that they spend their time on value-driven activities. So the 10% of decisions which require really discussing options, finding solutions, but not focusing on repetitive tasks on the 90%, which could actually run through in an automated way through the system.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good point, and you know, a good chunk of our network is, you know, automation and RPA focused, obviously, but you know, a lot of that has been, you know, in finance and accounting areas. So, you know, I love that example of, you know, I'm trying to get people to start thinking about how do we improve, you know, customer experience, employee experience, not just the traditional back office, you know, automation things. So that's interesting as well. Axel, what other advice do you have? Maybe final words of suggestion for anybody watching who, you know, is still kind of doing things manually. What else should they be considering, or how should they be starting kind of becoming more digitally minded?
Yeah, good question. So I think there's one key ingredient which you shouldn't forget at all is, to the same extent you focus on technology and digital, ensure that you increase the focus on people. And if I say people, that's certainly the consumer, the customer, why we're doing this, but also your people, your organization who embarked with you on this journey. So focusing on people, the way they work with each other, putting them together in cross-functional teams, working in an agile way, and ensure that your organization is on board with you in this change journey, I think is extremely important. And this also requires a very clear, a very precise communication because things will change, and if we are not clear towards the people in the organization what changes for their day-to-day life, the way they work, we will lose them, and we'll never get the benefit of a digital empowered retailer.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. Dr. Axel Nitschke, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Take care.
Take care. Bye.